I attended ACC when it first opened. I worked for ACC in different roles and retired as a full-time faculty member in 2013. When my dad in the summer of '73 showed me the Austin American Statesman article describing the opening of ACC with the application that you could cut out of the newspaper, fill out, and submit, as well as the entire course schedule, it was a no-brainer at that point. Well, I got a part-time hourly job to do registration, to man a registration table in the very first semester.
You were on both sides of the desk, so to speak.
Right from the beginning, my roles were multiple roles at ACC, which was just a wonderful experience for me because it really changed my perspective from that of a mere student, sort of to having a role other than that was a responsible role of helping others in the process. So it just changed my perspective, my approach to academics, as well as almost everything in my career.
What was the atmosphere like at ACC?
Well, it was very much almost, you had this sense of almost a social experiment, because the civil rights movement had been going on. I grew up with sort of a political awareness for the first time as an adolescent and child with, I guess in '64 with Johnson. And so ACC sort of represented all that the Great Society movement that Johnson had sort of wrapped his legislation in, and it just felt like very much a part of that, even though you didn't even really notice the surroundings of the campus, the Ridgeview campus, and you didn't notice how limited the resources were. You just sort of experienced this wealth of spirit about what was going on, the newness of it, the idea of it, etc. I was taking a government class from Roland Hayes. And at the same time, in the history of Texas, at the state capitol, the Texas Constitution was going to be revised. The revised Constitution had been published, or the ideas for it. And there was a section in there on higher education. And of course, being very excited about the community college, as part of that government class with Roland Hayes, and I was a very shy student when I took Roland's class and your class as well, but Roland was pretty lively in his class with discussions and whatnot, and kind of an irreverent perspective on government, and so, and that participation thing was going on, that dynamic was going on. So I studied this thing about higher education, community college funding in the revised Constitution, prepared a presentation, and I went and spoke at the Capitol. And public speaking was not my thing, even in class. But I was up on the podium speaking to legislators about how important the community college was for democracy, for equal rights and equal justice, etc. I mean, it was that kind of inspiration and that kind of opportunity for participation that was just, when I look back at it now, I thought, where did that come from? But I think it was just part of that whole gestalt there.
You were able to observe the transformation of ACC over decades, and in particular, the transformation that followed a tax bond election in 1986. Up until that time, ACC had, as you know, had no local tax support, which limited what it could do in terms of facilities. Yes. Then things changed.
They really did. They really did. It was both a wonderful thing, but it was also definitely changed in terms of the development of bureaucracy, etc. At that point, I began to see sort of the increase in capacities that the tax base had created, but still hadn't really seen the kind of changes in bureaucracy that having that kind of money available to the college.
After the 1986 tax election, in fact, very shortly afterwards, the ACC Board of Trustees announced that they would not maintain the Ridgeview campus. It was a building, of course, that had been known as ACC in many areas, particularly East Austin neighborhoods, since 1973 when the college opened its doors.
When I came back as part of the full-time faculty in '91, the East Ridge campus had just been established by the board. It was a lease, but it was to sort of answer the void that had been left in the East Austin community by the closing of Ridgeview and ACC's departure from that community. So in a way, I was a part of the sort of the reestablishment of ACC, even though it was kind of a temporary answer, and many felt insufficient, especially in the East Austin community. But I think that was the beginning then of ACC realizing it needed to do more, and eventually that resulted in the Eastview campus. Jonathan was one of several family members that followed me to ACC. So I was the first one to attend ACC, but my father came in the 70s to take photography courses and a certificate. And then in retirement, he came back to ACC and got a 2-year degree in substance counseling, substance addiction counseling. I have a sister and a brother, younger sister and brother, both have associate degrees from ACC before going on and getting bachelor's and master's degrees. All of my younger siblings have had at least some credit at ACC. And then my first son took his first maybe year and a half of credits before transferring to UT. I watched community college grow from idea to reality, but you really felt you were part of something special. To be able to overcome whatever needed to be overcome with whatever limited resources were available, the Spirit made that possible. And that spirit wasn't just in the ACC staff and students and faculty, but it was in the community also, community leadership. That involvement with community and state leadership at Austin Community College, I think, was something that made it possible for those challenges that we faced in big transitions like getting the tax base to make the most of those transitions. One of my main roles and most consistent roles at ACC has been being a fan of ACC. So from 1973 to the present, I continue to be, a very passionate fan of ACC.